I just rewatched The Last Dance, which feels really fitting.
I've never actually seen it.
It's a good time capsule, I feel like, into 1990s basketball. And I actually think there's a lot of like NWSL value there if you're interested in like how a league grows globally and like how superstars exist and the influence of superstars. But of course, basketball and soccer are very different games. A single individual can't will a team forward. But it felt appropriate given the Alex Morgan of it all.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a thing for Backheel that should come out today or maybe first thing tomorrow that really did not talk about her as a player at all. You know, in the context of what you're saying is like, you know, history is a narrative of abstract forces that one individual can only have so much impact upon. But if there is an individual, you know, who may have had that level of impact on the league, it might be her, because it's not just her being a player rep and really helping to get the CBAs in the position that they were in, or fighting for equal pay with the U.S. women, or even having Mana Shim and Sinead Farley's back. Like, she's, you know, Lynn Williams actually said that. She's like, Alex Morgan's the reason the anti-harassment policy exists. You know, she organized the players to put that in place a year before the CBA was even signed. And without that policy, I mean, does the league survive the scandal, which would come 6 months after that policy was put in place? It's a really legitimate question.
It's a really open question. All right. Define Alex Morgan for me, however you want to. Give me a word to define Alex Morgan.
Support. Which I don't think, if you had asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have said that. And I'm not sure how a lot of people would have said it either. Because she's a striker. She's one of America's best. And has been the face of the sport for over a decade. But when you are a goal scorer and when you're really famous like that, that usually means you exist as a symbol for yourself. But everything that has come out it'll be 3 years, in 3 weeks, it will be the 3-year anniversary of the Meg Linehan and Molly Hensley Clancy stories about Paul Riley and Rory Dames being published. That completely changed Alex Morgan's reputation, I think. You know, this is something I wrote about. It's like, there are a lot of people who've had the kind of power that she has had in whatever business or industry or field that they occupy. Not everybody uses it the way that she used it. Like, I remember when the Pride were formed and there's the introductory press conference with her and Kaylin Kyle and Tom Sermani. And I'm trying to remember what Sermani said that prompted this joke from Alex Morgan. But Morgan said something to the effect, I was like, you know, stay in line, Tom. Be sure that we're happy, or else. Ha 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 ha. And that had an extra little bit of sting to it at the time, because obviously the story had always been that it was the players that got Tom Sermani fired from the U.S. job. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, what the fuck, man? What are you doing? Why are you saying that? And so much of the reason that the Pride even existed at all was because Morgan wanted to go play where her husband was playing. And I think when you think about the league at that moment in time, with only 3 seasons under its belt, still being owned by the U.S. Soccer Federation, it could feel sometimes that the U.S. players were just using this as their little plaything in order to be able to have a good training environment for the thing that really mattered. And we've talked about this on the show a lot, about those players were not getting paid by the league. They were getting paid by the federation, so that just natural incentive should follow that they should prioritize it. But it felt as though that meant that all the other players were being left behind and being forced into these scenarios, like not having a say in which team picked up their discovery rights, or not having a say in whether or not their contract was guaranteed, and not having a say in where they got traded. And here was the most famous player in the whole sport being like, yeah, well, I kind of just get to do what I want because I'm me. That's how it felt. And then 5 years later, you look back or 6 years later, you look back and you realize, like, no, she was doing what she had to do because everybody was being told that this league, you are lucky to have this league at all, and we can take it away at any time. We've done it twice before. So don't get out of line. And she was the one person who actually had leverage to say, no, I want to create an environment for myself that is best for me and the family I want to start. And what we didn't know is that she wasn't just doing that for herself, that she was fighting tooth and nail to allow Mana Shim to file this abuse claim against Paul Riley without risking retaliation against Shim herself. That when she found out that her teammate Sinead Farrelly was also going through that she organized almost 250 players to force Lisa Baird into creating an anti-workplace harassment policy, which is incredible that it didn't exist at the time already. And then as a player rep, she was integral in getting the 2022 and the 2024 CBAs into the versions that they exist in, which are very, very player-friendly and player-forward and player-strong. And she also dropped the Twitter thread that exposed Lisa Baird as a liar for not knowing about any of the scandals that had been going on behind the scenes. Like, she stuck her neck out. She didn't have to. She could have just sat on her millions and been a happy, rich, powerful, famous person. But she didn't do that.
The word I was going to use is catalyst.
Yeah.
In the sense that both her game, goals change game, she was often a catalyst for whatever offense she was a part of, but she was a catalyst for change in every way, both on and off the field, and really created a slipstream for everyone else's lives to be better in.
And like
I think it's such a loss. It's such a tremendous loss. And she is totally worthy of having a simulcast on 97 Channel.
I know.
Because for all we've talked about on this podcast about sort of like Alex Morgan's end of her career and sort of her physical limitations as a striker, there's nothing but deep respect here for who she was at her peak. If we'd been doing this podcast for a decade, we would have had lots of glorious things to say about Alex Morgan over the course of this podcast. She just was getting old the way 30-something-year-old strikers tend to. We'll definitely get into that a little bit later when we talk about Asisata Shwala. But like, it's just really hard to play striker at an elite level later in your career,
and in the
or past a certain point.
In the most competitive league in the world. I think that the other part of Morgan's NWSL legacy, at least until recently, that was easy to believe, was that she was just using it as a training ground and never really took it seriously and never really had a campaign that you could say, all right, the league is defined by who this player is. Like, in the first few years of the league, like Christine Sinclair and Kim Little were probably the defining players of that first period.
Lauren Holiday.
Lauren Holiday, I think, is absolutely in there as well. The second period, which you could say is like 2016 to 2019, it's Sam Kerr, Lynn Williams, and Dabinia, and to a lesser extent, Jess McDonald. Since 2021, it's been Sophia Smith and Trinity Rodman. Morgan has never been... She never won an MVP award. She won an NWSL title in the league's first year, which is a very, very different league than what it is now. She was an MVP finalist only once, only won the Golden Boot one time. You could say that this league really didn't wear Alex Morgan as its face, but it very clearly wears Alex Morgan as its face now that we know everything behind the scenes that she'd been doing to affect change. And, you know, American Soccer Analysis is the only publicly available XG model that takes the NWSL all the way back to 2016. FBref only goes back to 2019 with the league. So if you look going back to 2016, if you just look at in terms of counting stats, in terms of volume, which I think is maybe the best way to think about career path on XG, because we know just how mercurial players' career lengths can be for a lot of different reasons. Like, she racked up almost 38 non-penalty XG, and that's sixth all time since 2016.
It's very good. Yeah, I was trying to think about how to contextualize her in the broader sense of like American sports leagues and American sports icons. And for team sports, the person that I sort of landed on after some consideration is she's kind of, and Pino deserves being included in this as well, but she's kind of like the Bill Russell of American women's soccer.
Okay. Say more.
Never the flashiest. What I mean is Bill Russell is not the defining basketball player of his era, though he was a many, many times over champion. I think you'd look to like Wilt. You know, Wilt is the greater accumulator of stats. Bill Russell is the conscience of basketball for a lot of it. And Alex Morgan, like Bill Russell, always had an eye on a greater sense of responsibility and what her image meant. And I think that, and a true humanitarian for the sport. And, I think we look back on, everybody remembers Bill Russell for all the titles that he won. And Alex Morgan, certainly with her World Cups, her gold medals, her NWSL title, did a lot in that way. But I think, again, along with Megan Rapinoe, is one of those players that like gets you in that Presidential Medal of Freedom area.
Yeah, and I think, again, before the tail end of 2021, when we found out a lot about this stuff, I think you would say that Rapinoe is the one who represented the political side of the women's national team in that window between 2016 and, say, 2021, when they were going through all of their legal fights to get equal pay. And Rapinoe deserves that place in history without question. We're not taking it away from her. But I think that it was maybe easier to say, well, it's really Rapinoe, because she's the queer woman who is really sticking her neck out in the age of Trump, saying the things that she's saying, taking the knee in 2016 post Kaepernick, and taking all the shit that she did as a result. It was easier to say that it's only Rapinoe who really is being an engine for all of this. And it seems pretty obvious now that Morgan was just as much a part of all of that, even if Morgan maybe wasn't as so obviously public about it until the end of 2021.
The Pino equivalent to me is somebody like a Muhammad Ali, very visible at all times, and making the platform
like supernova levels of charisma.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was just never Alex Morgan's game. Like, she is very charismatic, but it was just not. It was not how she chose to use her own spotlight. And you need both, actually, in a sports landscape.
It is true. And the thing that I kind of came to the conclusion with in my piece was, do the Paul Riley and Rory Dames abuse scandals come to light without Alex Morgan? Yeah, probably. Does the workplace harassment protection policy enter the league at some point without Alex Morgan? Yeah, it's likely. Does the CBA in 2022 and 2024 get passed without Alex Morgan being a big voice at the negotiating table? Yeah, maybe. But does all of this stuff happen as easily or as quickly if the most famous, the richest, the most powerful person in the industry isn't saying, I'm only in it for me, That I'm not so sure about. Like you said, you need the dazzle, you need the razzle dazzle, you need the conscience. I think Alex Morgan is also someone who represents to a mainstream part of America someone who is unthreateningly powerful. And so you need a person like that in your corner sometimes to win this shit.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that Alex Morgan understood the subtler parts of what needs to happen to create real change.
Well, and also, like, there are ways that you can use your power in the world.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I'm getting at, which is to say that, like, Megan Rapinoe let herself, I think a lot of the times, be a polarizing agent. And Alex Morgan understood that wasn't how people saw her, and that wasn't the best mode for her to succeed as an agent of change. She strikes me as just like a wildly astute political mind.
I think that's right, actually. I mean, and when you hear other players talk about her, I think that is an inference you can easily take away from how her peers and her colleagues saw her too.
Yeah, like if Alex Morgan wants to be the next senator from California, I am totally on board with like Alex Morgan 2028 or whatever it'll be. Like, I think we have a lot more to hear from Alex Morgan long term.
She has said that her phase 2 of her career is she wants to continue investing in women's sports, and she kept that a little bit vague in her media availability. So does that mean she's going to want to buy a piece of a team? Does that mean she's going to want to try and put money into girls' sports development? Both, all of the above, something else we're not thinking of? I mean, I think there's a lot on the table about how she wants to use her platform now, but it's very clear that she's not going to go gently into that good night, as it were. Again, something she could have easily done, and she's actively choosing not to do that.
Yes. All right. So thank you, Alex Morgan, and we'll now begin the show. Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals, Alex Morgan, the GOAT edition. I am your host, Eric.
I'm Evan Davis. Yeah, the news about Alex Morgan's retirement broke like the moment we posted our bonus episode on Thursday. So we are slightly behind the news cycle on it, but I'm glad we got to talk about her and her legacy, so then we can really get down to brass tacks, which is what the fuck's going on with some teams in this fucking league, man.
All right, Evan, why don't I normally lead us through the whip around, but there were a bunch of results this weekend that I think raise good questions about what the fuck is going on with certain teams. Where do you want to start? Mind you, our game of the weekend, Bay FC Louisville, is a prime candidate for this kind of discussion, but we'll get there.
Let's start with Washington Portland.
Great, because I've been dreading talking about this Portland team.
Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get it out of the way.
Great goal by Hina.
Yeah.
Love Hina. If you're not a regular watcher of the Portland Thorns, Hina might be the single most enjoyable player on the ball in the league in her moments, and the personification of joy when playing this game, and thus ends what I have to say positive about Portland. It's rough. It's
bad.
It's like, I think this is, man, they are just leaking XG at this point.
Yeah, there's no excuse to make about, are they getting unlucky on results? Are the bounces just not going their way? Like, they are just certainly over these last 3 games, you might even extend that to like the most recent 5 with the 2 right before the Olympics break. Like, they are on a real skid here, and it's hard to see how it gets better.
This is the first time they've lost 3 games in a row in the same season since 2015, 2016.
Probably 2015, if I'm guessing, because that's the one year
I looked it up the other day. Whatever,
Yeah.
I'll take the own goal if I've got it off a year. It doesn't matter. That is a staggering statement from Portland. And this is a team that is not void of talent. This is a team that has made, I think, some actively bad trades. I think Alex Spanstra is already not working out as like a sub in for Janine Becky. I don't know who advised that was a good player to bring in lieu of taking away one of the more potent wing attackers in the league, wide attackers.
Yeah, the more time goes on and the worse these results become, it feels clearer and clearer that the Bethals were probably saying, like, shed salary, we're resetting in the offseason. Because how else do you explain some of these moves?
I just don't know if I think that's true.
Okay.
I mean, it's possible. I just don't think the logic is as clear as that. Like, I'm not going to give LeBlanc and co credit to say we're a little bit in tank mode, because this team had every ambition at the beginning of this year to win this league.
Without a doubt.
And they just don't have the analytical wherewithal. Whoever is doing their evaluation stuff is just not doing a good job, or is having their message not making it through, because this team has had some injury misfortune, but it is also actively worse than it was last year, and is shedding good pieces and picking up pieces that are beneath its level.
But I also think that if you do look at the summer window through the lens of ownership is telling us to get younger and cheaper so that they can start a rebuild and also kind of build the team in their image. You can kind of see some level of logic. You go back to Becky, like Becky had what, year and a half, 2.5 years on her deal, and she's on the wrong side of 30. Okay,
no,
so you get rid of her
and injuries.
You know, yeah, and like you bring in Raylan Turner, who is young, who is better than the top line number suggests, maybe could be a really useful complement to Sophia Smith and Morgan Weaver when Morgan Weaver gets healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Mackenzie Arnold, not young, not necessarily good, but you have to say, at least in an insanely and not predictively small sample size, she has been a pretty good shot stopper, and maybe you feel more comfortable with at least someone with international levels of experience replacing Shelby Hogan and maybe giving Bella Bixby a challenge next year. So maybe you kind of squint and say that's an okay thing. Maybe the deal was not as financially prohibitive as maybe it would seem on its surface, given her age and the number of years on the contract. So I can, and then, you think about all the movies that they made last year, maybe even like Isabella Obeys and Nicole Payne and Marie Mueller. These are all young players.
Yeah.
That make you wonder if they are trying to develop a young, sustainable, quote unquote, core for the long haul. Also with the knowledge that like Christine Sinclair is probably on her way out the door sooner rather than later. Megan Klingenberg is not going to be an available backup for you for very much longer.
Becky Sauerbrunn, yeah.
And Becky Sauerbrunn maybe being the most important part of all of that. It doesn't seem like they have necessarily made good moves in that respect, at least with the way that Obeys and Payne have acquitted themselves at club level. But I kind of can see a plan, even if it's not necessarily working.
Yeah, I guess I would counter and say that Obeys and Payne were speculative and probably low-cost choices.
Sure.
But without any real data to support their acquisition. And Marie Mueller, I remember looking at those numbers early on and being like, okay, this is a potentially very solid pro. And I would say Mueller is the only one who is hit. Who is
of
like
those three? Yeah, sure.
Who's been a solid hit. And you will not win in this league moving forward if you go 1 for 3 on transfers and speculation. And I think that there is a comeuppance that I am sure lots of other fan bases are ready for the Thorns currently happening, where we say Portland is no longer holds this God-given place as an elite team always. Yeah. And you got lucky to have Sophia Smith. Without Sophia Smith, this is maybe not a playoff team. No amount of Sam Coffey. I mean, without Sophia Smith and Morgan Weaver, this is a team that is like battling. And they were totally outclassed by the Spirit, who look like they're going to be just fine without Croy Bethune, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the Spirit looked good.
Nothing you're saying is wrong. And you go back to, you can go back as far as the middle of June, where, they drew against the Reign and basically it was an XG toss-up with very little attacking potency there. They got deservedly beaten up and down the field by Kansas City, 4-1 loss. They lost on the XG battle to Utah and just managed to scrape through with a 0-0 draw. They convincingly beat a depleted and demoralized San Diego Wave.
I mean, convincingly beat 1-0. Like, convincingly beat. Yes, I get your point. But San Diego's free fall.
Yeah, and then they've been deservedly on the losing side for 3 straight weeks, 2 of which come from teams that, let's face it, given their status, they probably should be losing to right now.
Yeah.
And the other one is a Bay FC team that we'll talk about later that is becoming more and more intriguing by the day. Yeah, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Portland, even if maybe I can squint and see a way of understanding how they've behaved over the last few weeks. I mean, they are desperately missing Morgan Weaver. I don't think that is in doubt at all. I did have somebody tell me that this has been coming for 2 years, and I don't know if I quite agree with that. Like,
just look at the XG differential from last season.
I mean,
this has not been coming for 2 years.
The 2023 Portland Thorns, if you look at expected points per game, are the 11th best team in NWSL history by that particular metric. So I'm not totally buying that argument. And even in the first half of the season, they're averaging like 1.8 expected points a game. Like they were top 4 caliber, and that includes, the what would be that be that would include the 9 games in the first half of the year that they played under Rob Gale. But they have just really quickly tailspun in the second half of the season, the more and more they have had to rely on pieces that are aging or busts or both, and are not making smart moves to win now. And it really does remain to be seen if they will help them win in the long term.
Yeah, there's no joy in Stumpville tonight. All right, I'll do it. I'll rip it because this is really going to be a joy episode for Seattle fans. We'll switch over. We'll go from talking about Portland demise to the Reign, who did what they needed to do to beat Angel City.
Yeah, maybe fortunate on one of those VAR calls, but the Angel City players and the Angel City fans were quite convinced that they were hard done by from minute 1 to minute 90 by the referee. Yeah, I think it's been a bit more of a mixed bag, although sitting in the press conference after the game and listening to the way that Sarah Gordon was speaking about the referee's behavior, it does sound like he did not do himself any favors by basically cutting off lines of communication between the team captains, which is, not something you should be doing if you're a professional referee. Even if you're not going to like change your call or, be influenced or swayed by chatter from the players, at the very least, you do need to engage the captains to explain like why decisions are going certain ways and like what the pattern is and like how the captains can go back to their teammates and say, all right, he's calling this, he's not calling this, we got to adjust.
Yeah, the ill-named Trevor Wiseman did not demonstrate as such as referee.
Not a lot of wisdom
Friday night. That said, I think it would be a misrepresentation of the game to not highlight the ways in which the Reign, who went down early, reestablished command over that game on the road in a tough place to play, and kind of from minute 8-9 on owned that game. I on the Discord said something really stupid like Angel City looked real good. Boy, it was just a kiss of death after that opening 15 or so, because the Reign demonstrated the power of control in a game and just found opportunities and capitalized on them. G scored another goal of the week nominee, just a from a dead standstill, 0 backlift, perfect chip shot over Didi. Yeah, I mean, like the Reign
and Huerta and the Reign earned the penalty too. That Huerta scored.
And God, I love Sofia Huerta. I forgot. It's what a joyous player to watch. Yeah, the Reign seem. If the Reign and Bay end up in those final 2 playoff spots, are 2 and 3 ranked teams. Yeah, that would track based on past performances. This was the first of these Reign wins that like I felt was like pretty clearly deserved.
And Sydney Leroux scored an absolute banger at the very end of
which is
second half stoppage time.
Angel City's XG.
In most of Angel City's XG, and it's game state stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just throwing bodies forward at that point.
All right, what's next?
Kansas City, Utah.
Jimmy Conrads is maybe a really good manager. Like
this is the first time where I sense, Emi Rodriguez leaving and all the 30-something internationals that they brought in and the illusion of their success at the Summer Cup, and then these victories and these successes since coming back from the Olympics break. This is the first moment where I'm kind of like, all right, you have my attention, Utah.
That's exactly right.
Because they lost, and maybe barely deserved to lose, but they look pretty good.
I agree.
They look pretty good.
This is,
and a lot of it.
They missed some big chances in that first half.
Yep.
They seem to be really humming with Ali Sentner away. That was
coincidence.
That was straight for you, Evan. No, I think it's just the adults in the room have taken control.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And Utah has put together, we were being like a little facetious about like, hey, we'll talk about you like a legitimate playoff team if, you grab a result. And frankly, I don't think they did enough in the first half of this season, first 2/3 of this season to really be an outside contender. But on form right now, Utah isn't the worst team in the league. And we have not been able to say that for the vast majority of this season. This Utah team is going to be a problem for a number of opponents.
You put up 3 legitimately good chances against what has been the best team in the NWSL on performance, and it did not look like those were flukes. I mean, Kansas City put together some good runs of play through this game as well, because they're Kansas City and Temwa Chewinga is Temwa Chewinga. But this is the first game with the Alana Cook, Kayla Sharples center back pairing, which now makes, 4 straight games of different central defense combinations, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I'll double check that just to make sure my ducks are in a row. But regardless, it's the same problems that have plagued Kansas City since the Orlando loss have reared their heads again, which is that they've constantly had to reshuffle their back line, and those players are not able to get a rhythm going together. And so...
And Schulte's like in her second start. There's a lot in transition right now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that is a challenge for Kansas City, and they won the game, but again, they barely won the game. And until they gotta get things settled defensively and quick, because they are shedding points quite fast. I mean, and you can't sustain that for a long time.
Yeah, they didn't shed points this weekend, but they could have.
And it's the third center back combination in the 4 games since the Orlando loss. But still, that's just still a lot of movement. And the 2 players who are there playing in central defense for them at the moment were not on the team a month ago. So that's just a lot for them to get up to speed on.
Okay, which one's next? Next game for you?
San Diego, North Carolina.
North Carolina took advantage of a team that is in complete and utter chaos right now and did the job. Like, North Carolina did a very workmanlike job of dismantling a team that is defensively out to sea.
Cashed in on some good fortune. Like, they probably weren't worth 4 goals on performance.
No, of course. Yeah, rarely is a team worth 4 goals on performance. But yes,
they had the better chances throughout the game.
They had the better chances.
No question.
They dictated the nature of play. They took what could have been a monumental momentum evening and stripped that away almost immediately. They scored 3 minutes into that game, 4 minutes into that game, and then Kaylin Sheridan got sent off. It is chaos in San Diego.
Yeah. And it's a bummer for San Diego, because it should have been a very joyous occasion.
Yeah.
With would it be about 26,500 people out of 32,000 were in the stadium, which is pretty good considering how miserable the weather was and that the team only had 3 days to promote the game. So that's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, North Carolina, this is how North Carolina wins.
Yeah.
Very workmanlike, very, very studious.
And exploiting the inefficiencies of their opponent, of which Donovan San Diego has many. All right. I think the one thing that was steady as she goes was Gotham the Dash.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a long time, but it came.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gotham.
Yeah,
Gotham fine.
Yeah, Gotham's fine. Like a 2-1 scoreline, that is the Gotham FC scoreline of the season. Yeah. Yaz Ryan, great look very early in the game. A weird defensive mishap allows Diana Ordonez to level things up. And then outside of 1 or 2 moments, which include Esther's goal in second half stoppage time, there's a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah. A lot of Gotham keeping up their thing of like kind of never leaving second gear and still doing enough to get W's.
I wish that we also didn't get a chance to talk about this because it happened at the end of the week, but Cece Kaiser is now a Gotham FC member. And it would have been, and she was technically available for this game. It would have been very funny to see her suit up against Houston.
Yeah, I'm sure she would have enjoyed nothing more than scoring against that Dash team. And then finally, before we get to our game of the week, the Pride keep on priding and the Red Stars are in trouble.
Yeah, they look bad.
Yeah, generated what, like 0.1, less than 0.2 XG? Yeah, that is not going to do at home, guys. And the Pride, just kind of do the Gotham thing, but more convincingly. Like,
yeah, I mean, the Marta goal was, a part of it felt a little bit like vintage Marta, where she manages to manipulate the ball in ways that no human being should be able to, and she also scores, and then scores a screamer. But yeah, I mean, this, again, wish that Carson Pickett had started. Starting to get a little annoyed with that, but otherwise, I think Seb Hines really is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it mode, and nothing's broke.
Yeah, Orlando continues to roll on their way to a perfect season, and the Chicago Red Stars were never going to be a real obstacle in the way of that, given the way.
If there was a game to like shake things up in order to keep things going, this was not going to be it.
That ain't the one
for the Pride. No.
All right, let's get on to our main event, Louisville Bay FC. Which side of this equation do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Bay. Home team, the winner, and now they're really starting to solidify a playoff place here.
Yeah, that's right.
They are in 7th place now on points. And I have had questions about this recent run of form because the level of opposition has not been particularly strong. But you know what? We got to back the fact that we picked Louisville to be the best of the 7th place to 12th place window and get into the playoffs, and Bay straight up kicked their ass.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no other way to put it. Like, they kicked their ass.
Yeah, I think that Abby Dahlkemper may end up being the move that is the defining sort of end of transfer window solve, because Bay.
Let's throw Penelope Hocking into that too.
Yeah,
let's talk about Dahlkemper.
But let's talk about Dahlkemper first, because Bay's problem all season has not been scoring goals.
Right.
Bay's problem has been
creating chances.
Chances. Bay's problem has been about some bad finishing luck, some ill-timed concession of goals, but more than that, what they've been giving up the opposition. And they took a Louisville team and cut off their legs. Dahlkemper is just commanding a back line that looks organized now. I think they are benefiting a lot from Savvy King not being there. Boy, this draft class, this U20 World Cup has stolen a lot of draft players, and the teams that they're on ain't missing them.
Well, you mentioned with Utah that like Utah is benefiting from the adults being in the room. That's what Dahlkemper is here. Right. Like this is a 31-year-old World Cup winner who's one of the best off the ball central defenders in the league. And despite her age and despite her injury issues, it's not like she's gotten any stupider at the position.
No, her health will be a question mark probably for the rest of her career. When she is healthy, she is a very good defender. And that has been what Bay is lacking. Emily Mangus, Abby Dahlkemper, not my favorite athletic back pairing I've ever seen. That said, they took a Louisville team that has also not had a lot of problems scoring goals. A Louisville team, obviously, without Uchenna Kanu and Savannah DeMello, but a Louisville team with plenty of weapons. And
arguably put out one of their stronger attacking cores, or that is potentially available to them, like Janine Becky on the right wing, Emma Sears on the left, Bethany Balser through the middle. That's a good attacking group. Yeah, maybe you want DeMello there, maybe you want Kanu instead of Sears, but that's a good group. A distinction without a difference, frankly. Like this is a very potent attacking lineup that Beviana has threw out there, and they didn't create shit.
Yeah, that's right. And
like 0.05 XG per shot is what Louisville has to show for it. The one chance that could be arguably identified as a quality chance, you start digging under the hood and you think that FB Ref probably got the XG wrong, because it's in the 38th minute when a cross comes onto Marissa DeGrande's head, and DeGrande heads the ball toward Bethany Balser, who then heads the shot over the crossbar. It's from 4 yards out. It's from dead red. Normally you would say that's a pretty high XG chance. That's how FB Ref is tagging it at 0.60. And even StatsBomb is putting it at about 0.40. But a headed key pass to a headed shot,
Tough.
It doesn't really matter how close you are or how central you are to the goal mouth. There's a reason ASA maybe ASA is a little low at 0.07, but ASA is pegging it low for a reason.
That's right.
And that's it. And that's all you got to show for yourself attacking-wise.
Yeah. There was an Ari Borges free header as well on a corner that was like a low XG, but as far as like if we're talking about a clean look at goal, that was kind of the only other thing that happened.
Yeah, and the Balser shot, for its probably likely low XG value, it comes from the only sequence in the game where it looked like Bay got beat.
Yeah, and I want to give Bay a lot of credit here. I think both of us are now that we're talking about it are going to come down on the side of Bay very good, Louisville it's fine. Like, it's not fine in the grand scheme of things, but like there's nothing in this performance other than their inability to deal with Bay's press that I'm like super concerned about from Louisville. Mm-hmm. Like, this is just a tough road game at a tough part of the season. And Louisville is not getting results. That's a huge problem. And some of it's just bad luck. This wasn't a bad luck game. This was you got beat pretty cleanly game.
But it doesn't necessarily portend anything for the future.
Yeah, but Louisville we're at the point in the season where it's just like, how many points have you left on the table?
Yeah, a lot. Because you are, after including this weekend, you are 5th place in XG differential, and you are in 6th place in XG per shot differential. Mm-hmm. And you are sitting on 19 points, and you are in 11th place.
Yeah, and
that is a lot of points, and there is not a lot of time left.
But if you want to tell the story of this game as one where Louisville, as a road team, did a decent job denying great opportunities, I think you can make that argument, except for the thing that kills you, which is like an Abby Ursig disaster that Penelope Hocking, through sheer force of will, turns into an Oshuala goal. And that's where maybe we talk about the other thing that Bay did in their sort of late transfer is they went and added a weapon that hopefully gets more out of Oshuala than everyone else has been able to get out of Oshuala.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, Penelope Hocking was very much involved in at least 2 of those 5 big chances that Bay had. And I think also it's not just how do you add another winger who can create chances and service for Oshuala, but like it's also another person to get involved with what Rachel Kundananji does so well.
Yeah.
Which is to like lay dimes in the box after she's beaten. I hope that Laura Millay like goes and sits with herself and like ponders who she is as a player and what she's done based on some of the things that Rachel Kundananji did to her.
Oh my God.
Throughout the game. Like, just really made a fool of her.
There was like a jumping back-heeled clip pass in the first half that was just like straight out of like the Brazilian playbook of like Yoga Bonito. Like, it was like watching a Nike ad from the 90s, levels of just like stupid touch.
She barrels down the flank, gets 1v1, then does a full like pull up and deke that puts the defender not only on their ass, but like ass over elbow. And it's only through Hocking not getting a clean hit on the shot that
Hocking fans
prevents that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That the only thing that prevents that from being a goal. Like, Hocking is also able to like wriggle into like oceans of space in the middle of the box near the penalty spot, while Kundananji has thoroughly embarrassed her marker, who is trying to clean themselves up from the deck. Like, it's like, you cannot play like this, Louisville. If you like, your identity is built on denying, like minimizing chance quality and maximizing chance quality on the other side of things.
Yeah.
And Bay did not allow you to accomplish either of those tasks.
Here's what I saw from Bay that I thought was so smart. Mm-hmm. They understood from the jump that without Carson Pickett, you really can pin Louisville's wings back. and they allowed the press to do that. Kundananji, this is maybe my favorite performance of hers so far in the league, because as much as she was a terror when it came to sort of like open dribbling and chance creation, she was just doing like really great situational pressing. And Bay sort of left that mid block for a lot of the game and was really putting pressure on those balls out of the back, and also taking away the core of what works for Louisville, taking away the channels from wide to center to stop Flint and DeGrande from being able to receive and progress the ball. It was a surprisingly open game. Both teams were playing like they were chasing 3 points and needed it. And while that didn't result in a goal until later in the second half, it did result in sort of this landscape battle in which Bay was always on the front foot, always trying to press, always trying to, and denying Louisville the chance to sort of move forward and create opportunities. The press sustained. Do I think this press gets away with it against like Washington? No, maybe not. But Bay read their opponent, looked at the absence of arguably Louisville's best progressor of the ball this season, and suffocated. Kind of from the jump. I think for as much criticism as we've given Albertin Montoya on this podcast, he got it right today, or he got it right in the Bay Louisville game.
That is extremely well said. I think your point about Carson Pickett preventing that level of front foot pressure on that flank, it's so visible when you look at Louisville's passing network and you see that Aaron Wright, on average, was not in the attacking half.
No, Aaron.
For most,
Aaron Wright's playing a completely different position than Carson Pickett. They are both nominally left backs, but a left back is not a plug and play position when you go from Carson Pickett to Aaron Wright. And that, if you wanted me to flag one thing that I'm like, shit for Louisville the rest of the way, it's you got to figure out how you're going to create anything down that left flank, and how you're going to replace the progression you've lost with Carson Pickett.
Look at the spread of box entries for Louisville from the left flank, 12%.
Yeah, no, it's
I doubt it was ever less than 30% when Pickett was on the field for them.
Yeah, it's just what has happened down the left. It's a canyon where once stood a mountain. Like it's awful.
Yeah.
And no amount of Janine Becky's going to solve that, by the way, unless you really start getting clever about how you want to progress the ball.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, they don't play the same wings. So you need to completely
what I mean is like
the direction of your flank play.
Exactly, and
Becky was pulling inside a lot. Becky was pulling inside a lot, trying to use Laura Millay as a progression option, and then Becky was pulling inside, which means there was really no width available on the right wing. So, like, if you want to use, the right flank as a stretching point, that's where most of your action was coming from, but Becky is going to be the better service provider, so give her natural width, because trust your central attacking players. Like Balser can handle the middle. I think that's pretty obvious. Or do you worry that Balser is going to need somebody to help slip between the lines to give her balls as she progresses, and you didn't have DeMello available to you, so you needed someone who is a little bit more technically proficient than, say, DeGrande is going forward? Okay, fair, I can see the argument, but then you're just wasting all of the stretching that you can do on the right wing when it's Millay that you're asking to do that. And Millay also didn't get that far forward very often.
No, I mean, there just lots of problems here, guys.
It's funny to look at the field control map, because I joked on Discord, it's like more like field not in control, am I right? Because there's just no area where either team really seemed to like get a foothold. But what that kind of means is that just Bay kind of ran things in transition.
Yeah, and again, it was because the Louisville wings were pinned, the center of the park got clogged, the passing wasn't super crisp, and Rachel Kundananji, when she got on the ball, just did so much work moving the play forward. Let's talk about Asisat Oshuala, because I think it's been a minute And there's something a coach said to me just about striking, or just being a striker. It's like, look, you get the goal. Like, if you offered nothing else to the team, but you still score a goal, it's a goal. Like, you did your job. In this game, I actually don't agree with that from a manager a lot of the time. I mean, unless you're like Erling Haaland or somebody like Erling Haaland, where like that's truly the thing. But Oshuala, you look at the passing network for Bay, Oshuala is essentially like a buoy on an island doing nothing and offering very little to connect the play, and scores the goal only out of the sheer willpower and work of Penelope Hocking. Like, Oshuala is creating nothing for herself. And I'm starting to see, and frankly, we have been seeing for a while, like, oh, are we on the wrong side of an age curve for a striker who's not used to playing in a league where people are where defenses are just better and where like the talent around her isn't so overwhelmingly great?
The lack of her dynamism, I think, has been the thing that has surprised me the most.
And it was there in the statistical profile. We knew that she didn't do a lot but score goals, but we didn't think that this kind of fall off was happening. Like,
no, and now I don't know. I also want to give her a little bit of credit. Like in the 34th minute, there's, on the second phase of a corner kick, like Kundananji puts in a little bit of a short cross that Oshuala, while being triple teamed, is able to trap and try and slot at the near post, and it just goes a little bit wide. And like it's a very good chance, but there is a level to her target player, fox in the box, poacher profile that, if you want to think about sort of how Alex Morgan felt like a square peg in a round hole relative to the other attacking weapons the U.S. women's national team had been trying to implement over the last few months to a year, Oshuala maybe is starting to feel like that too. And that is a little bit of a concern. It also makes you very happy that Hocking is there so that Kundananji doesn't have to do it all herself. But also, maybe the optimist perspective is that Oshuala's static nature can still be exploited when you have these two very kinetic wingers.
Yes.
Who can do things like stretch back lines out and make room for a kind of a fox in the box who is going to be pretty lethal if she has space around the penalty spot or in the 6-yard area. And maybe she starts getting more of that space because of the general like pest nature that Kundananji and Hocking represent. Side note, I hope that Hocking is starting going forward. I know it's her first week, so that's part of why she came off the bench. But man, those 30 minutes of normal time really should underline where the creation is going to come for this team. Not going to come from Dana Castellanos, and it's not really going to come from Asisat Oshuala either.
Yeah. For me, the question is like, is the Hocking acquisition and the potential of Penelope Hocking the thing that salvages the purchase of Asisat Oshuala, or like makes that purchase look better? Because Kundananji has often found herself being like the lone creative force for this team. Tess Bodie, I don't want to like discredit a lot of what Tess Bodie's done this season, but Kundananji has been a hit and is a world-class player. Oshuala seems very, very dependent on service. And I think we've seen enough of it this season to say isn't going to be changing very much, and like isn't going to be stepping up and sort of anti-Lynn Williamsing. Like when Lynn Williams isn't scoring, Lynn Williams is doing everything else. Oshuala, when she's not scoring, is not giving you anything. And
maybe this is going to be taken out of Montoya's hands.
Yeah, maybe this is the thing that opens up Oshuala and balances out that Bay attack. Certainly Hocking looked very good.
Or it's just taken out of Montoya's hands because Oshuala went off with some kind of injury. We don't know the severity or the extent of it yet. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you really hope that positive case that we've laid out is what can occur, because Oshuala still is clearly someone who is very good It just is now a much more narrower set of circumstances where she can be good. So if she's healthy and if Kundananji and Hocking starting on either side of her, maybe Bay really does have something here, just so that their attack does not remain one-dimensional in ways that it has when they have not looked good.
Mm-hmm.
And then their defense, and then on the other side of it, Dahlkemper helps plug the leaking ship to make sure that you don't get beaten on the other side.
Yeah.
And then you start feeling a lot more confident about your prediction that they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Bay is starting to look like a team that is figuring it out and peaking at the right time. They are not the ideal that they set out to be as a team, but they are playing toward their talent more. I felt like this was a game that really maximized the skill sets of most of the players they had on the field. If Bay is in a period of self-discovery and it has figured something out, Bay, with its weapons, starts looking like a really tough out, like a team you don't want to face in the playoffs.
But they also have 3 pretty difficult games ahead of them, 2 of which are on the road against North Carolina and Gotham, and then they got to play Orlando at home, which is essentially a road game.
We will learn so much more about Bay over the rest of September.
Yeah.
But, hey, they got points on the board. This is 9 points on the trot. This is exactly what they needed to be doing to grab a playoff spot. And if that playoff line that we've been sort of setting out there as like 30.5 points is to be believed, they already got 24.
It's only 2 games, but between their decisive thrashing of Portland last week and their decisive defeat of Louisville this week, you start to stroke your chin and think, what you do with those 2 results is you say, this is the first genuinely sustained period, even if it's only 2 games, of good performances from them. Mm-hmm. And you can build on that. You've got some tough games ahead, got a couple of easy games ahead where you could like rack up points and really solidify your position. But this is the first moment, I think, all season where I'm starting to think that they could do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, they refuse to draw games. So
literally refuse to do it.
With 7 games remaining, if they can figure out wins and maybe just a lone draw in those 7 games, 2 wins and a lone draw, I think probably does get it done for the playoffs out of those 7 games.
Oh yeah, and I also forgot they got to play Kansas City, and that's not going to be fun.
Of course, it's not going to be. Yeah, it's going to be disastrous. Yeah. So this is where we're at.
This is where we are at.
Time to outro. I think it's time to outro.
Listen, guys, this has been the show. Thank you so much for listening. If you are a member of our Patreon, and if you are not, you should be. But if you are, we've got a couple of things happening this week. Number one, our bonus episode on Thursday, we're going to be joined by Ana D'Souza, who works in the data technology department at FIFA and has helped develop a lot of the tracking data that we have cited on the show, both for the World Cup last year and the Olympics this year. And she worked for the Jamaican women's national team during the World Cup in 2023 and just gave a talk about that experience at the Women's Sports Analytics Symposium in Philadelphia over the weekend. So we are very excited to get a lot of her insights about her journey in this space. So look forward to that. That'll come out on Thursday. And on Friday, if you decide not to go and watch this game at a bar, we are going to be doing a live stream for Orlando, Kansas City.
I am going to be on a solo road trip during that, but I will find a way to make this happen.
You want to know why? Because he's a fucking professional,
That's
folks.
correct. Yeah, I'm very excited for that.
So
game. Wouldn't miss it.
Yes,
yeah.
It is the game of the season. It would have been a little bit more of the game of the season if Kansas City wasn't in the middle of this little wobble in their form, but we still think that they are the 2 best teams in the league, generally speaking. So this is going to be a real test about whether or not Kansas City can right the ship and if Orlando can maintain their unbeaten run. So it's very, very exciting. So we'll be sending out information about where you can watch that on YouTube, but that will be Friday night. So we hope that you can join us for that. Again, that is only for our Patreon subscribers. So if you are not a member for only $6 a month, sign up this week and join us on Friday night for that live stream. In the meantime, do all the things that you haven't done already. Rate us 5 stars, review us on a platform that offers you the option. Follow us, tell your friends about us, follow us on social media at XOwnGoals. That's the letter X Own Goals, including Blue Sky. Send us an email at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com if you believe we've made an own goal. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk to our Patreon subscribers on Thursday. We will see our Patreon subscribers on Friday.
13th.
And we'll talk to the rest of you. Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Lucky September 13th.
Yeah.
My brother's birthday.
Yeah.
And we will hear from the rest of you next Tuesday.
All right.
Enjoy your week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.